Investigative reporter Julian Scher has spent years researching bike gangs. He's also authored these books, The Road to Hell, How the Biker Gangs Are Conquering Canada, and also Angels of Death, Inside the Bikers' Global Crime Empire. And Julian Scher is right here in studio. We just heard from one of the investigating officers there in Waco, Texas, calling this a turf war, suggesting there were several bike gangs involved in a meeting. One of those gangs not invited to the meeting. But help me to understand who would have been involved in here, the gangs.
The most important name here is the Bandidos. Canadians will be familiar with the Bandidos because we're a Hells Angels country. The Hells Angels dominate Canada, but the Hells Angels dominate Canada because they crushed the Bandidos. It was the Bandidos and the Hells Angels who were responsible for those biker wars in Quebec. Remember, 160 people killed in the streets of Montreal in the 1990s. Canadians would also be more familiar with the Bandidos, how vicious they are, because the biggest single massacre in Ontario's history, 2006, small farmhouse, 8 members of the Bandidos wiped out, police argued, by one of their own. So this is a vicious gang. It's the #2 gang in the world after the Hells Angels, and they're based in Texas. They run Texas, they control Texas. And what police and biker members are saying is that some of the smaller gangs, kind of either the farm teams or puppet clubs or just the smaller rivals, were meeting at this restaurant along with the Bandidos, and there was a particular tension between one of the gangs called the Cossacks and the Bandidos. And the Bandidos just wanted to make sure that they continue to rule Texas, and they won't mess with anybody. They will take on anybody who threatens their dominance.
Now, would you call it something like a recruitment? Would the smaller gangs be wannabes? Some
of them are, but in this case, it appears to be a kind of negotiation where they call it a confederation, where they kind of map out the territory.
Right.
You know, what people have to realize is outlaw biker gangs, they're criminal organizations, but they're businesses. They're into drugs, they're into prostitution. So just like any other business, they'll say, okay, you take that street corner, we'll take this street corner. And the Bandidos have a global reach, unlike these smaller gangs, but that won't stop the smaller gangs from having these kinds of violent confrontations. What made Waco so bloody is people have to realize these guys are literally wearing uniforms. So the minute they see one of their soldiers in a firefight, they're all going to come to his rescue. That's why it escalates quickly into this kind of amazing explosion we saw of so many deaths and so many bullets flying around.
And this wasn't something held covertly. This was advertised. I mean, police sent out a memo expecting this to happen. As you know, there were about 24 officers who were at the scene before any shots were actually fired. They knew it was coming.
That's right.
But that befuddles me that, you know, they say, okay, well, we're meeting, and we're telling everybody we're meeting.
Because, you know, and this is what frustrates people. Biker gangs are not illegal. They can be declared criminal gangs. Doesn't make them illegal either in Canada or the U.S. Police have to do it case by case. But what makes the biker gangs so special, unlike the mafia, is they literally, as you can see, they wear uniforms saying, I'm a criminal. I'm a member of this gang, right? Members of the mafia don't walk around with a tattoo on their forehead saying, I'm a member of the mafia. The biker gangs do. And they're able to flaunt that power. That's what makes them so appealing to many criminals, because they strut in openly saying, I'm a member of the Bandidos. We are openly see ourselves as a law unto ourselves. That's what makes it so hard for police to infiltrate, to get the information, and to take down these gangs.
We know the Bandidos, as you mentioned, are in Montreal. So could this scenario that unraveled in Waco happen in Canada?
Unlikely in the sense that in Canada, the Hells Angels are so overpowering. What they're able to do is either crush the Bandidos through violence. In Alberta, they absorb many, many members. So for the moment, no, I wouldn't worry. The Hells Angels still control the Canadian territory. As they like to say, Canada is red and white, and it's not just the color of our flag. That being said, this is a global battle. The Bandidos have taken on the Hells Angels in Europe, in Australia. So yes, the Bandido chapters keep popping up. We've seen violence in the past here. in the end, though, I think it does force us in Canada to almost share our experience. Because when I travel through the States, what's amazing is here in Canada, you say biker gangs, you say Hells Angels. People now, in part because of our work as journalists, in part because of the extreme violence we've seen, people in Canada generally accept them as the criminals they are. In the States, they're still seen as these lovable rascals, these rebels, these outlaws. So I think we can share some of our experience with the Americans and say, wake up and smell the coffee. These are bad dudes. They advertise themselves as bad dudes, and they're organized crime.
But Americans have to be listening. Final question for you, Julian. What are you watching for now? I wonder if there's a big chunk taken out of that Banditos gang, because 170 people are being booked, and that's a lot of people, and they're still booking in Waco, Texas today.
The bad news is they'll recover quite easily. In Quebec, they would arrest 100 Hells Angels, put them into jail. They could easily find new recruits. This is a great recruitment poster for the Banditos. Wow. We don't mess with anybody. We're the meanest of the mean. And they also have independent, autonomous chapters. So the Banditos in Canada, the Banditos in the Northeast United States, elsewhere in the States, are not affected by what's going on in Texas. So this will be a setback for sure, but the Banditos will live to fight another day.
You haven't eased anything for me, Julian, but I do want to thank you for your time.
That's not my job.
That's right. Tell it like it is.
Tell it like it is.
Julian Scher, senior producer for CBC's The Fifth Estate.
Welcome. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell, share the show. You guys have been doing great about that, by the way. Thank you for listening. This is Joey. Let's get started. Now, today's episode is going to be about the police primarily. And when I say the police or the law, or law enforcement, or law and order, I want you to keep in mind what order we're talking about, right? I don't want to. This is kind of the game I want to get around from now on when it comes to dealing with issues with the police and debating white people about it. First and foremost, I don't really like to debate white people or coons, because it's an exercise in futility. I've said before, it's almost pointless debating somebody with impure intentions, because a person that's designed or incentivized not to get it will never get it. There's no amount of logic, no amount of proof, no amount of reasoning that'll get that person to understand something when their livelihood depends on them not understanding it, right? I want to expose what kind of order people are talking about when they're talking about law and order, and what we all mean when we say the police, right? I want you to remove from your mind any idea of the police, quote unquote, solving crime. Because really only about 40% of the crimes get solved. And that's regardless of if people are cooperating with the police or not. We're not talking about situations where it's the streets and niggas ain't talking. We're talking about people fully in cooperation with the law and just can't figure out who did it, right? The police aren't really there to solve crime. The police are there to protect property and policy. And I want to make a very, very, very special episode to break down who these back the blue people are really backing when they back the blue. Now, we're not too far removed from the January 6th riots that saw all these Blue Lives Matter people beating the shit out of blue lives with American flags while chanting USA. We saw cops getting crushed in doorways. We saw cops being chased up the stairs. We saw that uniform be totally disrespected and disregarded while people just marched onto private property and did whatever they wanted to do. So we know right then and there, and the reaction to the entire situation was, oh, they were just, they were just exercising their freedoms. So we know that respect for the law and all that stuff is bullshit. Because if you can pick and choose when you want to respect the law, you don't really respect the law. I want you to make note of when you hear black people complain about the law, what do you hear black people actually complaining about? And this is what I want to get to the meat and potatoes of. You notice that when black people complain about dirty cops, cops doing obviously dirt shit, planting evidence on people, killing innocent people on camera, right? Harassing people, having police officer gangs, right? Where you get tallies by murdering people, right? Raping women. You see what I'm saying? Harassing children, stealing people's money, being involved in illegal operations themselves and being completely corrupt. When you hear about these things that have absolutely nothing to do with proper police work, right? Framing people, messing with crime scenes in order to produce certain outcomes, sometimes to cover things up, sometimes to up your tallies. When you hear all these things happen, because these are the actual things that black people complain about when they say, fuck the police, right? They're not talking about fuck Andy Griffith, right? Right. When you hear black people get caught doing some shit, black people are the first ones to say, nah, he did that shit. Nigga got caught. He got caught trying to steal something. Nigga got caught. You only really hear black people complain when there's police activity outside of the normal confines of police behavior, right? You're allowed. You notice you never heard a black person complaining about the arrest of Rodney King. You got a drunk driver driving around, driving drunk, as drunk drivers do. You finally caught his ass. You slap the cuffs on him, and you put him in the squad car, and you drive him downtown, and you process him. Hell, even if you pull the watch your head move as you get into the car, all right, you're allowed that one. We'll look the other way. I think it was being an asshole, driving around endangering people. You don't get to handcuff this dude and beat the shit out of him until times get better, until you get your anger out. You don't get to do that shit. When you hear black people complain about police misconduct, when you hear people complain about police behavior, it's oftentimes behavior that's outside of the confines of police activity. And you notice these are the only times the back the blue people come into the rescue. There's plenty of cases of police officers getting caught having sex in their squad cars, police officers getting caught high as shit, drunk as shit. Plenty of cases of stuff like that, and you don't never hear black folks say anything because those type of as a matter of fact, those are the types of incidents where you'll hear police get arrested or fired, and you don't hear black people say shit. In fact, if you hear us say anything, we'll say, "Well, shit, y'all firing that officer over that? You fired him because he got caught for public intoxication, not because he killed a nigga." We'll let you Those are things that sound like they need counseling. You having sex with your girlfriend in the squad car so your wife don't find out. That sounds like something that you should be reprimanded for, not fired. What if you're a good cop other than that, right? But you beat the shit out of some 13-year-old, and here come the police unions to back the blue. Now, why is that? I'm going to tell you why that is. It's because deep down, those kinds of white people full and well understand what the police are supposed to be for. The police are supposed to protect you from niggers. That's it. They're supposed to be like a talisman that wards off Negroes. That's what the police are supposed to be for. And in order for the police to provide that amount of protection for you against Negroes, you're willing to accept that a couple of innocent Negroes are going to get hurt in the process. You're willing to accept that innocent bystanders will get shot in crossfire. You're willing to accept those things because, again, black lives are wholly expendable. This is why I get so frustrated when I hear black folks talking about, or anybody talking about, black on black crime, because if I simply put a cop on one of them black folks, you won't even call it a crime no more. Up to and including, I mean, cops do all the same shit niggas do. You'll get super duper mad if two gangbangers are fighting and shooting it out in the street and somebody shoots a toddler or something like that, which is horrible, right? But we'll hear all the ringing and moaning and gnashing of teeth. But if that same person is some cop that's in pursuit of a no-knock warrant and he shoots some little kid and kills some little black kid in the hood, you don't really say shit. You'll grumble for a minute and then you'll go back home. Because deep down in your mind, you're thinking they're allowed to do that. You have a special group of people in mind that are allowed to do the shit that you were so up in arms about when it was another nigga doing it. These are the issues that I see. So when we talk about the police, we're not talking about an upstanding, upright organization. We're talking about a group of thugs that enforce unjust laws. And they know that. They're fully aware of that. They fully understand that. And they need it to be that way. If you want no further proof, look at your president, Joe Biden, who just rewarded decades of police misconduct with more funding. And I want to point out to you this false narrative that's being made. You guys are, whether you know it or not, you're in an episode of Police Academy. Because what they did was they're trying to push this narrative that, oh, now that there's not as many police on the scene, there sure is a lot more crime going around. That's right. You won't have the police to kick around anymore. You never know what you got till it's gone. I bet you wish you had those cops right now, right? And I want you to think about something. Would it really be that costly to hire better cops? Would it really be so much to ask to just say, hey, man, if you got a long record of police misconduct, I mean, costly police misconduct, both in fines to the city, lawsuits to the city, and cost of property and humanity and bad blood between us and our citizens. If you got that bad of a track record, man, we can't have you being a cop over here. Would it be that hard to have some sort? Like I just want you to kind of think about this. People that want you to back the blue, right, think that it's normal to have a profession with absolutely no standards. Like, remove the word cop, remove the word police officer, and put in the word doctor, right? Imagine if you had a doctor that had a track record of prescribing illegal medications to people on the side, doing botched operations, malpractice suits out the ass. And whenever he did that, he didn't get sued. The hospital that he worked at would get sued, or the city that he was practicing in got sued. And the city would have to pay fines on behalf of that doctor's misconduct. And all that doctor would have to do if it got too hot where he's at is just move to the next city over. This is why doctors have malpractice insurance that they got to pay out the ass. Just imagine for a second if you didn't have to do any of that because you're protected by a union that's backed by the city and the taxpayers got to pay that bill every time you leave a scalpel in somebody during an operation. You showing up to the operating room drunk, you sexually harassing patients and shit, and the city got to pay for it every time and give you sensitivity training. Imagine if that was your pilots, your lawyers. You wouldn't accept that. But you got a person who's literally given, through qualified immunity, a license to kill, like James Bond. You give this officer, this newly minted officer, 6 months of training and a GED, a gun, and a license to kill indiscriminately, long as they're black. Because you sure wasn't letting that happen when that white Australian woman got shot by Noor, that Somali cop who thought he was following the rules. Oh, no, you shot a white woman. Wasn't no back the blue. His ass went right to jail. Wasn't even no fanfare. You notice that. Always pay attention to what groups can and cannot find the energy and the time to get up for. Right? Just pay attention to that. Pay attention to how, for certain situations, entire groups and circles and networks of people can be moved to action that were completely dormant before. I want you to pay attention to the dogma, because what these people really do is they hide behind the law and moralism, and they have absolutely no problem, no sense of irony, no shame in shedding that cloth the moment it's convenient and picking it right back up like nothing ever happened. All that back the blue and respect the law and just comply went right out the window the second January 6th popped up. All that just comply shit turns into do not comply when it's a gun law you don't like. You notice that. And when black people are talking about the police, we're talking about a corrupt system. And I really, really want black people to understand, these people full and well understand that the system is corrupt. It's not even considered corrupt to them. The police and law enforcement and law itself being biased against black people is what the system was designed for. And they know that. This is why when that black cop killed that white woman, he was going off script, and you see those same people flip on him. This is why. This is why you don't see these people get incensed. Now, I want you to think about this. You cannot think of a more open and shut, obvious dynamic of wrong and right than the South Carolina church shooting. You can't call those black people who were in a church praying and invited that white boy in to come sit with them. You can't call them people thugs. You can't say they were in the middle of misbehaving or doing some kind of illegal activity. They were literally in a church, taking race out of the equation, right? Letting that crazy looking white boy in, trying to be good Christians. Did you see any white folks that were outraged by that white criminal that did that to those nice citizens? Did you see any white folks that were outraged at the behavior of the police taking that boy out to Burger King like he did a good job? Could you imagine if some black person, let's say that black dude that hit them people he hit everybody with a car. He hit them innocent white people in that parade with that car, right? Let's say the cops took him to Burger King afterwards. What do you think the reaction from white society would have been? What do you think the reaction from white society would have been if they would have taken that Negro to Burger King after he killed all them white folks? Let's be real for a minute. Ain't nobody backing the damn law. They're backing that the law is doing their bidding. You're full and well. See, these are people that take steady diets of Alex Jones and Joe Rogan and all this shit, and they see every conspiracy, every underhanded, backhanded, underground, sleight of hand, behind the mind's eye trick that all these groups are doing. But you don't see all this dirt that the police do every single day. Most of y'all got family and relatives and friends or are cops yourself in the white community, and you don't know all these open secrets about what the police really be doing. You think that black folks just don't like the cops because we just can't obey the law, right? Right? Knowing good and hell well, y'all dedicate your whole careers to fucking with black folks. You can't even hold it in. It would be the easiest job in the world to be a racist white cop and just straight up get away with doing straight up crimes and terrorism to people, right? And all you would have to do is just keep your mouth shut. But you can't even do that. Every day, a new cop is getting exposed, bragging and gloating about what they do because they can't keep it in. You can't even keep it in. You can't even keep a moment of silence. You can't even keep a code of silence because you're so used to getting away with this shit. Talking on the internet, getting doxxed and shit. Right now, the Los Angeles police are being investigated for gangs. Having gangs that initiate members by you got to kill a black person to get in. Whole gangs that got names like the Executioners and the Banditos. Gangs that are cited for such crimes like harassing victims' families long after they had killed them. Taunting them. I told you before, the Minnesota police, where they killed George Floyd, whenever they killed a black person, they would drive down the black neighborhood and bump "Another One Bites the Dust" by Queen on all their cop cars. Just harassing people. And remember, these are people, this is something that's always funny with black folks. People think black people don't pay taxes. If you live in a city, you pay taxes to that city. So you got to pay taxes to give these niggas badges and guns and vests for them to mess with you. If you're a back the blue person, you're totally cool with the idea of no knock warrants. Just think about that for a minute. When have you ever heard of a no knock warrant in a white neighborhood? On a white person? A no knock warrant in a day and age where everybody's strapped. Think about that for a minute. You're a whole white person. You're asleep right now in your cabin in the woods. You're asleep right now in your nice mansion on the nice side of town, right? And you hear somebody trying to break into your house in the middle of the night. What are you going to do? You going to grab a flashlight and go, oh, it's probably a cop. Let me go see what he wants. Or are you going to grab that thing and try to defend yourself because you think you're being invaded? So think about that. Think about grabbing your gun because you think you're about to get invaded because it's the middle of the night. You're not a criminal. That's the thing you got to understand about black folks. Not every black person is just a criminal waiting to get caught, right? You could be a regular church-going, job-attending citizen. And you can get your door kicked in by somebody dressed in all black with a ski mask on, just like a robber. And you're supposed to be able to tell that that nigga's a cop at the last second. There ain't no warrant for your arrest. You're not on the lam. You just got home. Anybody right now, you hear somebody try to break into your door, you're going to go grab your shit. That's what every Second Amendment channel right now online, white, black, or indifferent, is telling you to do right now. You got to defend your home. You're inundated on television and on the internet every day with push doors, break-ins, robberies, gang rapes, assaults, attacks, surprise attacks, burglaries, right? But you're supposed to assume that that's a cop. So you grab your gun, get ready to defend yourself, and you get lit up by 50 shots by the police for resisting arrest that you didn't even know your ass was under arrest. And in multiple cases with these no-knock warrants where they've killed somebody, they realize afterwards, wink, wink, that it's not even the person they was looking for. And the person that they was looking for was already in damn custody. Think about that for a minute. And you're going to back that up. Let's support the guys who did that shit. We got to have their back because these niggers are out of line and this crime's too high. Think about that for a minute. You got multiple cases where your cops are so inept or so corrupt that they're doing no-knock warrants on people they're not even looking for and shooting up the house, and then got the cowardly nerve, right? Then got the cowardly nerve to try to charge a nigga for assaulting a police officer for shooting back when you didn't even identify yourself as a cop. Telling me police stop resisting as you didn't let off the 30th round already don't really mean shit. We shooting each other now. Think about that for a minute. All you First Amendment, Second Amendment, this is my country, I have the right to protect myself against illegal search and seizure, but you're cool with the idea of people just being walked in on in the middle of the night who haven't even committed crimes. You're cool. Like, again, these are the same people. I'm against illegal search and seizure of my property, but you're cool with stop and frisk for black people, where you only do it where the black people are. Think about that for a minute. The same people that didn't want to wear a mask, but you're cool with, excuse me, sir, I know you just left your apartment. Can I get you to drop your pants and bend over and spread your sack? I know you're about to go to work, but we got to make sure you're not up to nothing, okay? You're cool with that, but you don't want to wear a mask. So I want everybody to keep things in context when we say the police, because what easily happens is when you start talking about police and law enforcement is they all of a sudden make police and law enforcement this absolute just thing, and you just have a problem with authority. No, you got a problem with corruption. You got a problem with racial bias. You got a problem with cowardly policing, right? Because when all of a sudden the police are needed because there's a little white boy shooting up a high school, that cop don't even want to go indoors. That cop don't want to go inside. But we need you, officer. Yeah, but shit, he got a gun. What happened to serve and protect? So we got to start having a real conversation about the real issues black folks have with policing. It ain't having a problem with authority. It's having a problem with corruption. And it doesn't just stop at the police. Because if it did, the conviction rates of a lot of these arrests would be low. If it was just the police doing dirt and not the lawyers, not the judges, not the forensic people, then 99% of these cases would be thrown out as frivolous lawsuits. They'd be frivolous cases. Oh, man, you guys have arrested 1 million people, but shoot, only 100,000 of them actually ended up anything that we can convict or have anything stick. That would be a clear sign. Okay, it's just the police tripping. But do you know how many times law enforcement has been caught working with forensic evidence specialists, messing with DNA? How many times lawyers have been caught cooperating with judges, cooperating with police, getting people off? Do you know the kind of things they do? Like, let's back up, because a lot of black folks know this, but it needs to be said. Most convictions are confessions. Most of these convictions that police get are confessions. They're people who take deals, who take plea deals because they don't got the money or the time to be fighting cases in court, and they throw the book at you and they intimidate you with football numbers to the point to where you plead down. That's how most convictions come. But on paper, conviction looks like admission of guilt. So you got plenty of people. You got plenty of people that cop to cases that they didn't even really do, just so they can go on and get that sit down out. Man, I'd rather just go ahead and do my 2 years rather than face that 20 that they was going to throw at me. Let me just go ahead and do my little time. Niggas that really didn't do shit. They have to admit that 25 to up to possibly 40% of the people sitting in jail right now didn't even do shit, but just had to go ahead and take what they got because they'd rather have a little bit of time rather than a lot of bit of time. And oh, by the way, that's a strike on your record. You got a conviction on your record that you didn't do shit. Next up are the people that might have done a crime, but the punishment is way beyond what the crime actually was. You got people that are in jail because they can't afford to bail out. People that are in there for DUIs, speeding tickets, and not paying child support. And you got them in there with gang members and like, this is the stuff I'm talking about. All because it looks good on a lawyer's record that they got a bunch of convictions out of somebody. Hell, there are cases, and I'll put the link up, where judges made backroom deals with juvenile punishment companies to convict a lot of kids for truancy. So it becomes a revolving door through their program. There was a judge that got caught up on that about 5 years ago, and he was even doing white kids in. This is a white judge. Your whole criminal justice system is blatantly corrupt. And you know what the problem? This is the unforeseen problem of blatant corruption, is eventually, if your system is blatantly corrupt and overrun with corruption, right? Because there's two different kinds of corruption. There's functional corruption and there's dysfunctional corruption. Dysfunctional corruption is where you're so damn corrupt, you can't even do business, right? You go to certain countries in Africa, not to pick on Africa, we'll get back to white folks in a minute, but you go to certain countries in Africa, and as I've mentioned before, the police are so corrupt, they're going to pull you over right there, and they're going to straight up just ask you for some money so you can go on about your day. That's how desperate and broke some of the police be. You go to Nigeria, you'll get pulled over for not committing nary a crime. And they'll just tell you, my friend, I need to get a dash. That means I need some money. You make this all go away, man. Give me $100. That's dysfunctionally corrupt. Your system is so dysfunctionally corrupt with the criminal justice system here in America that one of the byproducts of that is eventually people just stop respecting it. People just stop adhering to it because all you niggas is corrupt. When your criminal justice system is corrupt, people no longer feel like there's a certain amount of behavior. There's a certain type of behavior that you got to have not have problems with the system. People just feel like, well, shit, I'm going to run into it whether I do this or not. And that's where folks is at right now. Black folks, we just learned that a mere lock, there's going to be no prosecution for that. And what white folks are saying with their inaction is that I don't see these black people as citizens of the country. And therefore, I don't really feel like this would happen to me. So I'm largely okay with the fact that it's happening. You could not have a white person being killed on a no-knock warrant without white society being in an uproar. Because the thing that outrages people when injustice happens is the idea that it could happen to them. But if you know in your heart of hearts that the reason these things are happening is because that person's black, it's more than likely because that person's black, and you know you're not black, then you know that the odds of that happening to you are slim to none. So you don't really feel like it's something that you need to be dealing with. But when you see your police officers get overrun, get inconvenienced, right? Remember, these white folks actually try to push the narrative that black folks are complaining too much about police brutality. knowing what we know about how the police get down, knowing that they've seen police officers perform police misconduct and then try to cover up the evidence. Remember the guys that got caught trying to destroy the evidence at a Burger King? It was a bunch of cops that were trying to crush and destroy the videotapes at a Burger King of them committing misconduct, all the while not realizing they were on new cameras, now destroying evidence. Now, just imagine for a second, what would happen if you had a suspect in a crime caught trying to destroy evidence? Can you imagine the type of charges that would be stacked up on top of their already existing charges? Just think about that for a minute. We got cases to where police get caught doing obviously illegal shit. And the Back the Blue crowd will be expecting us to just quit tripping about it. You have police officers. Remember, you have police officers that have shot little kids on camera. And the argument is supposed to be, well, hey, being a cop is a stressful job. What the hell does that got to do with you shooting kids? There's a case, see, and then we haven't even gotten to things like the Rampart scandal. The Rampart scandal, for those that you guys don't know, the Rampart affair was a special group of cops in LA that would go around town killing gang members. And see, I'm already hearing people would already say, well, they're gang members. They need to be killed. Someone needs to clean up the streets. See, a lot of people got that Frank Castle Punisher complex, where they think that they're Judge Dredd. They think that they're the law, the judge, the jury, and the executioner to decide what type of people belong on the streets, right? You notice it never goes to the motorcycle clubs that they be having. It's always just the black gang members. But the Rampart affair was a group of white cops that would covertly go around killing black gang members, killing black drug dealers, killing black people. Get this, though, in an effort to start gang wars. They would go around, they'd find a Crip, they'd kill a Crip. They'd make it seem like a rival set did it, for the hopes that the Crips would retaliate against that rival set. So there'd be more violence between those two sets, so that they could justify there being so much of a police presence. Oh, we need more funding for the gang units. I used to always suspect that was the case, and now I know for a fact that to be true. That they drum up gang violence in order to justify their own existence. And it was so prevalent. It was so bad and so known in LA. And it only got uncovered with the murder of Biggie Smalls. There was much speculation that Biggie Smalls was one of the people caught up in one of those Rampart killings. Now, they smoothly got themselves uninvolved from that accusation through some suspect investigating, but that's another story. That's how the Rampart affair, that's how the Rampart unit got exposed. Go look up Precinct 77 in LA County. Notorious. And it hasn't always just been with black folks. Go watch that movie, The Changeling, with Angelina Jolie. LA Confidential. It's always been known that the police in that area are extra super duper corrupt. I mean, on a whole different level. So when we say law enforcement, policy enforcement, we don't even got to go back to talking about slave patrol or none of that shit. We talking about modern damn times. We don't even got to touch convict leasing, the 13th Amendment. We don't got to even touch none of that shit. We're just talking about regular corrupt units walking around operating that people know to be corrupt beyond a shadow of a doubt. And they'll still tell you, we got to back these niggas. But let that same corrupt individual, like, you know who they won't tolerate in the police ranks? a whistleblower. A whistleblower. They'll call that a snitch. The same people that be so confused with black folks saying stop snitching in the hood. You don't understand stop snitching in the hood, but you understand the thin blue line. It was just the same damn thing, but for cops. The thin blue line is stop snitching for the police. You see us beating the hell out of this Negro for a traffic ticket, you better protect the thin blue line. Stop snitching, nigger. You don't see shit. You don't even want to know what happens to niggas once they get you behind them walls. Let me give you a little glimpse. I want you guys to look up a notorious blood by the name of Smiley in LA. And I don't even want to share what they have him do or what they used to have him do to other black inmates. They used him as a gladiator enforcer. I'll share the video with you. I'm not going to say it here, but it's some very gruesome stuff in order to try to torture other inmates. And one inmate came forth and testified. All them cops that were involved in that shit got off. And they always will. Hell, these same white folks that pretend like they don't understand how corrupt the criminal justice system is, these are the same white folks that'll sit there and tell you Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. So that means you know what goes on with law enforcement, but you play quiet and play dumb about it as long as that shit happens to us. Now, we tried for the very last time. We gave it a noble effort. We tried to go through the democratic process and do defund the police, which black folks didn't try that. That was liberal whites. That was liberal whites taking the ball from you again and messing up your messaging in order to stymie that movement. They knew that George Floyd situation, if they didn't mess with it, was going to be a windfall change for policing in America. And they didn't know how to throw a rock in that whole situation, but they figured out how to do it. And that way was to be overly aggressive with the anti-police talk. All black people wanted was police reform. We don't want you having qualified immunity, license to kill indiscriminately, which, to be fair, you really don't. You only really get that against black folks. You do that bullshit against white folks, you got lawsuits on your hands, something terrible. But see, a big reason for why they get to do black folks the way they get to do black folks is because a lot of black people are poor. Look at the case of Daniel Holtzclaw that they like to cover up and bury. Look at the case of Daniel Holtzclaw. Now, what was he doing? He was raping poor black women in the city, left and right. Had over 100 and something rape cases, right? Got away with damn near all of them until what? He happened to rape one black woman that had a little bit of money, had a little bit of education, and knew her rights, and knew to go report that shit. Most black women, most black people, you get assaulted by a police officer, you get sexually assaulted by a police officer. What the hell are you going to do? Call the police? We've seen day in, day out, they back the blue. They protect the thin blue line. They're going to cover for their fellow officer. Think about that. This is the only profession where they openly tell you to your face, we're going to protect other cops with misconduct against the citizens. Yeah, I know he killed that kid, but he's a cop like me, so I got to protect. That sounds like a gang. What's that Tupac line? They say niggas wear light clothes and their attitudes is shitty. So tell me who's the biggest gang of niggas in the city? That's the police. And then what we do is we play this game of confusion. You see, what white folks do, what the type of white folks that do this back the blue shit do is when you talk about misconduct by the police that's unbecoming and how you would like that corrected, they turn that into you hate authority and you hate police. And so if you're saying that's what police are, then shit, yeah, I guess so. What happens when you see blatantly obvious corruption and misconduct and then you cover for it? So you want all cops to back the blue and protect the thin blue line and cover for dirty cops. And then you want to turn around when something happens and say not all cops. Yes, all cops, if you're covering for the dirty ones. Doctors don't cover for dirty doctors. But you've tried unwisely to go through the democratic process of getting the police unfunded. I don't think that was a good idea, and that wasn't black people's idea. That was a bunch of liberal whites coming in with that all cops are bastards bullshit and all that stuff they were doing to scare people off of the idea of doing something about these police, right? All this was done by the Democratic Party and their operatives in order to make police reform as unappealing and unattainable of an idea as humanly possible. That's the Democratic Party's game, right? Because when you really want to pass something, when you really want to make a move and you know it's not popular, you don't name that shit defund the police. No one, that don't even sound like some shit niggas would say. When black folks say something about the police, the word defund ain't in front of it. It ain't even a D. D is passing. We give you niggas an F. As in F the police, right? We tell you straight up how we feeling about the police. We don't play coy. So we knew defund the police was some liberal white people shit. And just as it was designed to do, it was designed to make the entire premise of police reform a non-starter. And now the narrative that they're trying to push on the news is that without all these dirty cops out on the street, the streets are getting out of control. What do you think the end result of something like this is going to be? See, because let me tell you what the other end of this red wave coming is going to do. Get prepared. This is something I don't think a lot of black folks are thinking about. If they're editing and erasing and disappearing people online for misinformation, what do you think is going to happen when the latest Amir Locke, when the latest Tamir Rice, when the latest Mike Brown, when the latest George Floyd happens, and when you try to post it now, it won't go up. Or it'll say you're spreading false information. Or this video lacks context. Or you look around and your entire social media page has been scrubbed clean. Or they're blocking the video from getting around to black folks. What do you think is going to happen when they start doing that? And you start to look on TV and none of these officer involved shootings even make it on the radar no more. The average black person across the country don't know shit about what's going on to black people on the other side of the country unless they hear it from them black people. So if we start to get the communication interrupted, what do you think is going to happen with black people's wherewithal about what's going on with this shit's going to be? Imagine if George Floyd was a regional thing. If all the videotape, if all the shit about that was cut off to where it never really got outside of Minnesota. What if Mike Brown never really, like, you could do a documentary on Ferguson after the Mike Brown fiasco. Like after the cameras went away. after it was no longer fanfare and a national story, because that's when all the bodies started dropping. They bided their time. They waited for us to move on to another story and that no longer to make the rounds on the news. And then they started killing all kinds of activists involved in the Mike Brown protest. And you've never heard of not a one of these murders. How the average person forms an attitude about anything is by the evidence that's put in front of them. You start hearing, oh, this protester that was involved in the Mike Brown protest got killed. This protester that got involved in the Mike Brown protest got killed. That protester got killed in an officer involved shooting. You're going to start realizing they killed off a lot of these people. But none of that stuff makes it to your dinner plate. None of that stuff makes it to your news feed. Not even on the internet. Now, imagine if that was the case all the time. If you didn't really hear about any of these officer-involved shootings, unless they happen to be officer-involved shootings that happen right in your neck of the woods. And black folks could never communicate and put their stories together. See, that's what's creating a lot of the outrage online, is that black folks are able to put their stories out and hear from other black people and realize that their stories are not isolated incidents, but they're more common than they realized. They want to stomp a lot of that out. So what do you think is going to happen? If you're sitting here, if it's commonplace for you to put up something about the Rona, or you to put up something about Joe Biden, and the shit gets blocked from you even putting it up, and you can get deplatformed and all this shit, what do you think is going to happen to all these online activists that post this shit all day? I know a lot of us know that Black Lives Matter was a scam, but what we should be aware of, what does Neely Fuller say? White supremacy always does what with its tools when it's done with them? It's a military tactic. You don't let your enemies get a hold of that new tank or that new jet that got captured over enemy lines. You blow that shit up. You always destroy your tools. So how should black people take it that now white folks are officially dismantling the Black Lives Matter charade that they put together? Black folks didn't think about this for a second. Black folks have been known Black Lives Matter was a scam. Black folks have been saying Black Lives Matter was a scam. Black folks were saying Black Lives Matter was a scam during Ferguson. The black protesters in Ferguson ran Black Lives Matter out of town back then during Mike Brown. Slapped the shit out of DeRay McKesson. Ran them niggas out of town. But you would never hear that coverage from the media because Black Lives Matter served a purpose. To keep it real with you, Black Lives Matter was dormant and non-existent after the election, the failed election of Hillary Clinton, and they popped back up the day George Floyd got killed. White folks centered them into that conversation, turned it into a Black Lives Matter protest. White folks did that. And now seeing the white news media all of a sudden become investigative journalists for a change and start doing research and doing all these exposés on Black Lives Matter, you should understand that this is a sign that they're making a ideological, not even ideological, they're making a tactical shift. They're in the next phase of dealing with this shit. They're breaking that game down now. They don't need it anymore because they see the political winds changing. We no longer need to pretend like we're sensitive to the plights of black people. We no longer need an agent on the inside. Now we need to start riding this pro-white wave that's about to come with this red wave. This red wave is going to be very, very pro-police union. And I'm giving you this episode and I'm showing you multiple cases and multiple instances of open, rampant, unrepentant corruption that's supported by the Back the Blue crowd. And then I'm showing you things like January 6th and that white woman that was killed by Officer Noor, who was a Somalian. I'm showing you things that this same crowd all of a sudden won't tolerate. And I'm letting you see where the pattern is. The purpose of police is to keep niggers in check. It's not to do anything else. That's why this is the only thing they come out for. All those tanks and military equipment and the high-powered rifles and all that shit don't even come out for school shootings or bank robberies. That shit only comes out for black protests. Now ask yourself why. Ask yourself why. As a black person, watch this. You can be minding your own business, right? And all of a sudden you can see on the news, there's an increased police presence in downtown, your city here, in anticipation for the verdict of your officer involved shooting case here. Now, why do you think that is? They be knowing they're about to let this person off. They be knowing. They time the release of these cases. They time these things so that it's most digestible for the people. Black people. They time that shit like that for a reason. Don't believe me? Look at how long this damn Nipsey Hussle case been dragging on. This done blew every right to a speedy trial you could imagine. Because they don't know how they're going to drop that bomb on people that they're not going to convict shitty cuz. He's going to be able to play the role. They don't really have nothing to convict him on. No one's going to identify him as the witness. All them gangsters, no one's going to ID him as a witness and say he's the one that did it. That camera footage is shaky as hell. You didn't even arrest him at the scene with the weapons on him. You just arrested him somewhere random. That boy's going to walk scot-free and probably be killed before he can ever talk. This is yet another reason. And see, and we haven't even gotten to, we just established that most of these crimes, most of these convictions are confessions that are forced confessions, either by people being intimidated by the time that they're given if they don't take the deal, or by other much more violent and sexually aggressive means. Again, go look up Smiley. Real name, Wayne Jerome Robinson. Smiley. Go look up what they had that dude being as being an enforcer in prison for the police. You know all these things to be true. And you know them because you're the ones that chant Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, right? So you know all these things to be true. And then you want to point to shit like police arrest rates and conviction rates and crime statistics that are from the very corrupt motherfuckers we're talking about. You want to point out crime stats like, oh, this just shows you that black people have to be treated like this. You just admitted to everything I just said about how corrupt of a system you're in, but you want to trust the stats from that corrupt system and use those to be self-evident to argue for that corrupt system's existence. Like, how does that make sense? These same people will use the conduct, will compare the conduct of police officers, right? Because this is what always cracks me up about the what about black on black crime argument, right? When I hear people say, what about black on black crime? My answer is always, what the fuck about it? Because at this point, if I'm talking about police misconduct and you counter with what about black on black crime, you are now officially comparing the conduct or misconduct of sworn trained officers that were sworn to protect the law with what you've even admitted to be common criminals. And to be honest with you, even when you make those two comparisons, even if you were to just go, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and stack up the conduct of the average police officer to the conduct of a common criminal, you still don't match up. And that's really sad, because you know how you still don't match up? Two statistics that cops don't like to talk about. And that's doing your crime and doing your time. You know one spot that common criminals, drug dealers, pimps, prostitutes, gangbangers do very well in that cops don't? When criminals get caught, criminals go to jail. The end of story. The end. They don't have no special secret wink and a nod that they can give the judge to get off or to get less time. The judge doesn't come in and say, I'm going to give him a bench trial and I'm going to give him sensitivity training so he can be a better, nicer, more wholesome gang member. Nothing. You do your time. You do your time. I'm tired of hearing about Pookie and Ray Ray when everybody knows when Pookie shoots Ray Ray and Pookie gets caught, Pookie's ass goes to jail. When Officer Barbrady shoots Pookie, Officer Barbrady gets 6 weeks off at a desk job and a Purple Heart for bravery. It's not even remotely the same. He don't even lose his pension. Matter of fact, if you're a cop, you're low-key incentivized to get involved in an officer-involved shooting because it equals more money for your precinct. Because all that's going to happen is you're going to get Joe Biden fund the police money for sensitivity training. It's all a joke. And I want to point out something again about them crime statistics. Where do crime statistics come from? They come from arrest and convictions, like I just said earlier, right? So how are you going to complain about black on black crime when you wouldn't have black on black crime statistics if you didn't have arrest and convictions? We can't even compare black on black crime to police misconduct because 99% of the police misconduct is business as usual that doesn't even get recorded. There's no statistic that records, who was it? Ayana Jones, the little 7-year-old black girl that was asleep on her grandma's couch when the police busted in. Another no-knock warrant, shot and killed her, even hit her with a damn flare gun. Her body caught on fire, and the grandmother tried to pat the body out because it's her grandbaby, and the police tackled that grandmother, damn near knocked her teeth out, and then charged her with assaulting a police officer like a little bitch. You think that goes on a police misconduct stat? No. That's never tallied. We just get the story of that shit. That shit doesn't get tallied in nothing. But you want to use black on black crime statistics, which here's another thing. Just real quick. If there's a black on black crime statistic, right? Crime. People who commit crimes are criminals, right? By definition, right? By action. So you're comparing a black criminals list to your police officers. I really can't understate that enough times. That's like us talking about malpractice with doctors, and then the doctors start comparing us to, well, what about back alley abortions? I mean, how many botched back alley abortions are there with them coat hangers? It's like, nigga, that's a back alley abortion. You should be multiple cuts above back alley abortionist, right? Right? If the best you can do is to say that we're slightly above board when compared to back alley abortionist, you're a piece of shit. And likewise, if you're the police and the only thing you have to fall back on is our misconduct may arguably be slightly above board of criminals, you're a piece of shit. And sadder still, when you actually tally your misconduct, it's not above that of common black criminals. The black criminals' behavior is a little bit better. You got black criminals that have accidentally shot a kid and messed around and turned themselves in. Because, hey, man, I may be a gang member, but shit, I didn't mean to shoot that 4-year-old. I didn't mean to shoot that toddler. I didn't mean to shoot that 9-year-old. You got niggas that have killed innocent people that have gone to jail, got their ass beat because that violates the code. But you don't got a code. So when we talk about black on black crime, you're literally really comparing yourself to criminals and losing. You really have no way of saying we don't want the dirty cops no more. You can just transfer. The dude who killed Tamir Rice already done transferred and got into a second incident over in Oregon. You like that there are these mystery dirty cops that can go from scene to scene and you don't know what they did. Like, let's keep it real. This one's always made me very, very curious. You know, with Fred Hampton's murder, what was the crime Fred Hampton was in the act of doing when the police killed him? You ever think it's funny that the police who killed Fred Hampton don't even pretend that they were just out to assassinate him, that he wasn't really wanted for any kind of... They didn't even go through the trouble of like making up a crime and sprinkling some crack on him. They just ran in, drugged him. Like this is what the police admit to with Fred Hampton, right? Yeah, we drugged him. He was in bed with his woman and his pregnant wife. Yeah, we killed him. We couldn't have him leading black people into nothing prosperous. So you just flat out admitted that you intentionally killed a black leader in order to keep black people in disarray, right? Because it wasn't like he was out here doing no illegal shit. He was actually organizing gangs to not be violent and not be fighting each other. You killed that guy, admittedly, specifically to keep black folks in disarray, keep crime high. And then you're the same people telling niggas to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and not commit crime. When you admit it, it's not like some random white person. It's not like they got like a James Earl Ray kind of scapegoat. Some you know how white folks do with the lone wolves, right? It's not like it was some lone wolf. You had uniformed police officers with badges and guns acting on behalf of the Chicago Police Department, openly admitting to, we killed that nigger to prevent there being a black messiah. And everybody has always just been cool with it. They didn't even go through the effort of giving you a bullshit official answer for why they went and pursued killing him. So we know, right? It's not a question. It's not a mystery. It's not a conspiracy theory. This is a fact. We know that the police kill black leaders in order to keep the black communities all across America in disarray. That is a fact. And we still walk around acting like this system isn't corrupt. And y'all still got the nerve to fix your mouths and say shit like, oh, well, you guys don't respect authority. You don't respect the law. The only cops that you fire are the whistleblowers that try to stop the misconduct. Ain't nobody back in the blue when you got a female cop that stopped another cop from beating some black guy up. She didn't snitch on him. She didn't report him. She stopped him from beating a black guy to death. He snitched on her to the police. They got her fired. So that's what will get you fired. Think about that for a minute. All that back the blue shit went right out the window. You never heard a peep about what Jeffrey Dorner. Look at how the media handled that. They made it seem like he was just a random cop that went crazy. All that back the blue was out the window. He was just some crazed nigger that had to be dealt with, right? Could have been the biggest story in America at the time. They had to burn down the cabin he was in to stop him. They never talked about what made him go crazy. You notice that? Because we can't have you realizing that this system is overtly corrupt. overtly corrupt. And all of them know it. And all of them are okay with it because the system is doing exactly. I can't even say the system is corrupt. The system is by nature corruption. It was built to be that way. Corrupt is when something starts to change the way something was meant to be and making it compromise itself. No, this was the way this thing was built to be from the ground up. And we got to play this game with these people. Like we're tripping, right? Like we're being overly woke, right? When you're walking around killing folks indiscriminately. And the thing is these are the same people that tell you to remove race. If you really removed race from this stuff, you would look at this like citizens' rights are being trampled on. But you don't look at it like that. You look at it like, that's them niggers over there. It's not my problem. I've pointed out to you time and time again, and I think I'm going to put it in the intro of this. I've seen whole white hillbilly motorcycle clubs have whole shootouts in Hooters. Multiple people shot, a few people even killed. Cops there on the scene when it happened, trying to mediate like it's two school kids fighting. Now, Cosarks, y'all calm down, right? They're shooting on camera, hiding guns, not a single arrest made. Not a single conviction, not even pressing charges. The law is not the law. I've seen people, a black guy and a white guy, get convicted for the same charge. They're partners in crime. Same arrest record, same criminal history. The white guy gets a slap on the wrist. The black guy gets everybody's time. The law is not the law. See, and what's about to start happening now, the reason why I bring this up now, timing is everything. I want y'all to pay attention to what's going on in the news. Now, remember when them riots broke out, when them George Floyd riots broke out, if you remember, it was so bad. It was so overwhelmingly obvious that most of these people committing these crimes and most of the people looting and most of the people stealing shit was white. The media couldn't even avoid this on the cameras, right? The media was catching white women walking right out of damn Cheesecake Factory with just the whole display rack with all the samples in it. Nigga, just the whole rack. The toasted marshmallow, the apple a la mode, the birthday cake, the classic cherry cheesecake, nigga, just everything on one rack. Just getting a sample, right? Still couldn't say that bitch was stealing. Well, maybe she just bought the sampler and she just, Women, white women walking out trying shit off the rack for real, like carrying the whole rack of clothes out the Nordstrom, trying shit on, going back in because that ain't her size, on camera. Well, I hope she's not stealing. You can't even fix your mouth to say what you see. And I'm saying all that to say this. They're talking about food shortages in these major cities now, not just black folks. Everywhere. Food shortages. It's one thing when your Christmas gifts are on the port. It's one thing when gas prices is a little high. But food will get niggas to stealing shit. White, black, and everything in between. And they don't got enough police to police all that. And what did I say at the beginning of this episode? The police are not there to protect and serve you. They're there to protect property. Rich people's property. You're about to see a lot of white folks out here stealing. You're about to see a lot of methed up white folks out here stealing shit in a minute. Thieving in the night. Black folks too. But you know it's going to be highlighted when we do it. But you're going to see a lot of white folks out here stealing in a minute. A lot of people out here stealing in a minute. You're going to see a lot of heads getting cracked by law enforcement. And just like you saw on January 6th, all that back the blue shit goes right out the window when it's you. We're going to see what white people's relationship with the police. See, we've all seen what happens when white folks get pulled over by the cops. All that respect for the police gone. My salary, my taxes pay your salary, pal. They start reminding the cops who you work for. That's what I said about they know exactly what the police are for. Police are for niggers. The laws are for niggers, not white folks. You about to see a lot of white people get a rude awakening. Because a lot of you white folks don't realize that you're next on the scale. See, that's how racism gets you. You be sitting back cool with the police beating up black folks, not realizing that that's a dress rehearsal for you. When this government wants to shut shit down and force you to do shit, you'll get busted up too. They just use it on us first to get you to accept the setup of the police state. For all you black folks thinking that they can't do anything about all this police misconduct, look at how easily they fired all these police forces over COVID shots. They got total control over these people. They could control them pensions and all that shit if they wanted to. They don't want to. Everything's setting up to be a goddamn Thunderdome out here in a minute. Because you can't calm people down when they can't eat. I want y'all to pay attention to how much white folks really respect the law when the law no longer does their bidding. When those same cops that they normally be cheering on and backing the blue and yeah, go get those bad guys. When it turns into them cops standing in front of all these grocery stores and blocking you from eating, watch how quickly everything turns into January 6th. Don't let them shame you talking about black on black crime, because you can't even name another group that they measure the crime rate on. Don't let them compare your conduct to criminals. Black on black crime don't even mean black people, means black criminals. What about cop on black crime? You're not supposed to be a criminal. When we're talking about the police, we're talking about police misconduct and what is the punishment for such. Don't never let them get off topic about that. That is a system of corruption, not a corrupt system. It's working exactly as it's designed to be. Now, how we're going to deal with it moving forward. And this is what I really, really wanted to get into. Because defunding the police and talking about that does not work. That does not work. You do not want your opponents to see what your move is. You do not telegraph your punches. How you deal with police reform is the same way you deal with gun control. You do it state by state, state and local approaches. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. You start to attack qualified immunity city by city. You start in a very small city. Minnesota would have been a perfect city before the George Floyd events, right? Ferguson would have been another perfect one before Mike Brown. You get into a small city and you take apart their qualified immunity there. You had a little bit of success in Boston, where they had passed a rule saying that you are permitted to defend yourself against the police, up to and including lethal force. You make headway city by city, locality by locality. You do not go nationally. That's too much spotlight on your movement, and it'll be met with too much resistance. You go after the unions first. The second these unions realize they got to tap into those pensions. See, here's the thing about a lot of cops. Cops aren't united like you think they are. They're really not. They're really just looking out for their job. The second you start going after cops' pensions, Them cops will be snitching each other out. You can't rely on whistleblowers. You need straight up snitches that are looking out for themselves. And you start attacking those pensions, there you go. But I promised you this would be a quick one. And of course, as always, I lied. I'm going to sign off right here. But I really want you to pay attention to, in the next few weeks, you're going to start seeing more and more incidents of break-ins, robberies. I'm talking about in white neighborhoods, things that have to do with food consumption, food storage. It's going to get more and more desperate as these prices for common groceries go up. See, a lot of black people don't know. A lot of white people's bullshit gets covered up in the media. A lot of white people's bullshit gets covered up in the media, and we don't really know how they really behave. And we got a glimpse of that during them George Floyd riots. We saw how white folks really got down. You're about to see that on steroids in a minute. Signing off.